Welcome in, everybody, to the Flagship podcast. I am Chip Brown of Horns247.com. Very excited to be joined by Longhorn All-American offensive lineman, two-time Super Bowl winner with the Denver Broncos, blocking for John Elway, and 2,000-yard rusher Terrell Davis. Of course, while he was at Texas, he was blocking for Ricky Williams and Priest Holmes. Won 3 conference championships. You've seen him on the Longhorn Network, and now you're seeing him on the 2023 College Football Hall of Fame ballot, the one and only Dan Neal. Dan, how you doing, man?
Man, I'm doing good, Chip. How are you doing?
Man, I'm doing great. I'm loving this this hair.
Yeah. Well, my wife doesn't mind. I basically came down to, do I want to play golf or go get a haircut? And I've chosen golf. Not that I got any better, but I still haven't gotten a haircut.
Well, I love it. For those of you watching on the Horns 24/7 YouTube channel, you know exactly what we're talking about. For those of you listening to the podcast, Dan Neal's hair is down to his shoulders, and he's got a nice looking beard. He kind of looks like Jesus. But Dan, congratulations as always on the, the 2023 College Football Hall of Fame ballot. I mean, that's monstrous just to be nominated.
I'm sorry, it really is. I mean, and then that's probably where it'll stop for me. But I'm very, very happy about that accomplishment. I really. To me, the neat thing about it is it sort of reflects that time in UT football that I think sometimes gets forgotten about. And that is, we had some pretty good teams. I played with some fantastic players, great teammates. And to me, my name on the ballot's a reflection of those guys I got to play with and those teams we had. I mean, as you said, we won 3 conference championships. Not too shabby.
Yeah. I mean, you won conference championships at the end of the Southwest Conference, and then you won arguably the most memorable Big 12 conference championship game. It was the first Big 12 conference championship game in 1996 when you all went into St. Louis, the Trans World Dome, I think it was called then.
I think it was, yeah.
And you beat then number 3 Nebraska, knocked them out of national championship contention. James Brown boldly predicted that you all would win that game. People thought he was crazy. Take us back, Dan. We'll get to what's going on in current day, but I love, talking about that game and the build up to that game because it was mesmerizing to watch you all just wear them down.
Yeah, is that funny? Yesterday, ironically, I was asked what was my best memory of UT, my time at UT, and I had to think about it for a minute. And it's like, probably that Big 12 championship game. That was something special. And just to kind of set the stage, Nebraska was a 2-time defending national championship. They had won it in 94, 95. They hadn't lost. They did not lose a game in 94, 95. They lost a game in 96 on the road to Arizona State, who went on to win the Rose Bowl. So it was a good ASU team. Remember, Jake Plummer's a quarterback. That was their only loss in 3 years. And you said they were number 3, I think, in the country. They'd already planned on going to the Sugar Bowl to play, I think maybe Florida State, for the national championship. It was a foregone conclusion. There was like 5 UT fans at the game. It was all Nebraska fans. And leading up to the game, we were 21-point underdogs. And Macvick called a meeting, our head coach, and said, don't say anything outrageous. Don't give any bulletin board material. Well, 5 minutes later, James Brown goes to the media and tells them, I think we're going to win by 21. And in reality, what that did is we all kind of said, well, hell, if James thinks we can do it, then maybe we can. It was like the bolt or the jolt of confidence that we all needed because we love James. And we kind of decided then and there, we're going to win this game by 21. And, sure enough, it went by 21, but it came down really that one play, that 4th and inches, where we threw it to Derek Lewis over the top and scored a touchdown the next play to put the game away.
What was going on in the huddle when that play call came in I think it's called Steelers Roll Left or something, Dan.
Yeah, I
What?
forgot what it was called.
Yeah, but do you remember what was going on in the huddle? Because you're in your own territory, you're only up
Yeah.
3, there's like 2 minutes left in the game, and you get this call that you're going for it.
Yeah, we if you watch the game, Priest Holmes had a unbelievable day. I think Ricky was hurt, didn't play as much, and Priest was just unstoppable. Here we are, we need inches, and literally it's to put the game away. We're down there taking a risk because we're in their end. If we don't do this, it kind of gives them field goal range to tie it up at least, maybe even win the thing because they got time. So this is a critical point in the game, obviously. And if you look at Makovic, all play callers have tendencies. It's inevitable. And Makovic's tendency is when a game is on the line and it's the most crucial point, he's going to throw the football. And if you look at it, he throws the football. The history's done it before. And I'm in the huddle and they call a freaking pass play. And I'm like, are you kidding me? We're going to throw the football. We're going to just as, I'm an offensive lineman. I want to run it. And sure enough, we call it. And after that play was over, I'm like, great call. What a call. But it was a gutsy call because a lot of people think that it was a run pass option. James did have a run option, but James wasn't really a running quarterback. And he never, if you watch it, he never is looking to run. He's throwing it to Derek Lewis, but their Mike linebacker stepped up immediately, which opened up the lane, and there was nobody there.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, I think Makovic told James come to run, but James read the play, saw Derek Lewis wide open, lobs the ball to him. You all run down, Derek runs down the field famously looking up at the Jumbotron to see when the Nebraska defenders grabs, he puts 2 hands on the ball, gets tackled at like the 11. What I always tell people is watch that next play. I think it was a counter play.
It was. Maybe it was a power. It was counter power, one of them.
And you're pulling and you kick out, I don't know who you launched a Nebraska defender about 3 yards backwards, and Priest Holmes had a hole the size. I could have run through that hole, Dan. I mean, do you remember that play?
I do remember that play. So I was pretty excited at that point in the game. And they called one of my favorite plays because it gave me an opportunity to do just that. And that is pull out there, get one-on-one with a guy that's smaller than me. And if I maybe got lucky, catch him off balance, you can really lay somebody out. And that's kind of what happened. I was excited. He was dejected. And it showed on that play. I caught him just right. And, yeah, we scored.
Yeah. I mean, it was just the final knockout punch to an unbelievable game. James Brown, Makovic tells you guys don't say anything. James, because I'm the one who asked him the question. Fortunately.
Oh, it was you. That's right. It was you.
Yeah.
We have to blame for this.
And Dan, fortunately, I recorded the interview because
that's right.
Makovic accused me of making it up. I had to show up at practice and play the tape for him. And then Makovic was like, oh my gosh, well, what is it about James Brown that, Makovic would say, don't say anything. And I said, what do you make? This was my exact question. What do you make of being a 21-point underdog? And he said, I don't know. I think we'll beat them by 3 touchdowns. And I was like, what? When did you start thinking that? And he's like, we got good players, man. We're playing good football. What is it about James Brown and any stories that I love that guy. I think he gets overlooked for, I thought he was overlooked by the NFL. I mean, all the guy did was win.
I agree. Like I said, in reality, off that team, I want to say maybe 9 or 10 guys were drafted. We actually, modern day era, I think it was the highest number of draft picks except for the 2005 national championship team. We were talented. We just struggled with different things through the year. It wasn't all the players' fault. There was a lot of stuff. And we got hot at the right time. If you remember, we played A&M the week before, and I think we beat them 55-15. We just kicked the crap out of them. Yeah. Just we were peaking at the right time, and that's exactly what James was saying. We're playing really good football right now when we're a talented team. Those are both facts, and put those two things together. We're well coached. We get a good game plan, which we did have. We got a shot here, and I think Nebraska just, I don't think they were really ready. I think they had no clue how good we were, because there's games you watched earlier we didn't look so great.
Right.
And then, if you watch those and then you watch the end, we're a different team. And the team, the second half showed up that day, and we played up to our capabilities that day. And honestly, things went our way, and they'd have to beat a team like Nebraska, and we capitalized.
Yeah. I think y'all were a 7-4 team going into that game, but you were peaking at the right time. When you think back to the guys on that team, I mean, Casey Hampton, who another guy I think gets overlooked for big time honors, because
yeah, he does.
I mean, that guy he won, like you, he won 2 Super Bowls with the Steelers.
Mm-hmm.
Like you, was in the trenches where you're not in a glamour position, but man, he held the point of attack. You went up against that guy every day in practice. Who were the guys that stood out to you, your teammates on that 96 team?
Well, to give you an idea of the depth, Priest Holmes didn't even start for us.
Yeah.
And obviously he was undrafted. I said we had like 9 guys drafted. Priest wasn't one of them.
How about that?
He was an undrafted, is in everything. Most people know his story and how great of a player he turned into. Well, we knew it. We always knew he's talented at Texas. He just didn't seem to get the lucky break that he ended up getting. I mean, you look at it, you had Brian Westbrook was a top 5 draft pick on that team. Tony Brackens had left at by that time, but he was part of those teams. I was fortunate enough to play in the NFL. You had Trey Thomas, you had Tajay Allen, a guy a lot of people don't remember, Curtis Jackson. You had Mike Adams,
Wayne McGarity.
I was going to say Wayne McGarity was on that team. There was a lot of really good football players on that team. And in the end of the day, as I said, we were peaking at the right time. We were a good team in the sense that we actually liked each other. We liked playing with each other. We had to work through some things earlier in the year, and that's kind of why we weren't peaking and playing as well as we could. And once we relaxed, and really James was a big part of that because he was always so relaxed. And when he said, I think we can win by 3, you're like, well, here's a guy that doesn't say much, is pretty quiet and is confident, relaxed, not tense, not a rah-rah guy, just a guy who gets the job done. Everyone followed him. They love James. And I agree with you. I think a guy got kind of overlooked. A lot of the players in those teams got overlooked, my feeling, over the years. And again, that's to me why this Hall of Fame is an honor, because I feel like it kind of gives a voice to those teams that, hey, actually we were pretty good, So it was really a special time in Texas football. As I point out, and I'm not proud of this, but, my college experience that went from 92 to 96, and from that time to today, they've won as many conference championships as I did in my 5 years here at Texas. So it gives you an idea of some of the things we did, and they're not easy to do. I thought when we won that first Big 12, we'd win 30 of them. Well, we've won 3, and that's one of them. So that's been the hard thing is hopefully we can get there again. But it was actually a pretty fun time to be a Longhorn.
Yeah, think about that. I mean, you won 3 conference championships, and Texas has won 3 since.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, wow. That
yes. And look how old I am.
Well, I mean, my goodness, Dan. I mean, you're old. I covered you as a player.
I know you're ancient. Chip.
I'm ancient. I'm like a fossil. One thing I found interesting about your time at Texas, Makovic was not what you would consider a player's coach.
Yeah.
But you as players came together and played for each other. Can you talk about that? Because that is something I thought last year's Texas team was lacking.
Yeah. It's a difficult thing to go through as a player because you hear the term, hey, it's your team, and it is, but you're told what to do. You're told when to get up, when to go to bed. I mean, you're told what to do all the time. And so it's like, how's it my team? It's really the coach's team. Once the team and the seniors and the players understand what that is, that it's your team, and you basically say, it's our team. I don't care what those guys say or do. We're going to do what we need to do to win, because this is our last shot. They're coming back, coaches. They get another shot at it. They get repeats. We don't. This is it for us. And that's kind of what we struggled with at the beginning. And our record reflected it. And we were kind of struggling because there was some tension in the locker room, not amongst the players, but I think probably player coaches. And once we kind of accepted that this is our last chance for us seniors, and I was one, we want to win this thing. We just won it last year. We know we can do it, and being the defending Southwest Conference champs, let's get this thing done. And fortunately, that was the first year of the Big 12 where they split the conferences, and the Big 12 South was abysmal. So with a bad record, we could win it, and we did. But then it put us up against Nebraska, and the North was the stronger one, obviously, and one game, winner take all kind of, and that's what it came down to. But again, we at that point had accepted this was our team, and we were really going to do what we had to do to win, because we wanted to put our number up at that stadium. And when I go to the games and I look up there, it brings me a lot of pride that number's still up there, and it will be forever.
Yeah. I mean, you were there at a really interesting time. People don't remember the roster imposter, Ron McKelvey, but Dan was there, a 30-year-old, guy who'd stolen the identity of another guy, was playing college football. His eligibility had expired, but he had, taken the identity of someone else. And
that's right.
Oh my God. I mean, that was crazy. That was
my wife's favorite story, by the way, Chip. She loves that one.
I told you I tried to go find him, one Holiday Bowl, because he was working in San Diego, and he still doesn't want to talk about it.
Yeah, my wife was asking me about that. Like, no, Chips, I think, tried to track him down, and he just, he left in the middle of the night the day before the Sugar Bowl, and he's a ghost. Like you just said, no one's heard from him. No one knows what happened to him.
It's a 30 for 30.
It really is. It's one of the, there's and I forget the name. It's the same guy that did the movie Dazed and Confused. He did that one about baseball, and it was about
Richard Linklater.
Yeah, Richard Linklater. In that movie, there's a roster imposter in that movie. And he stole it from McKelvey. And it's hilarious in the movie. And it wasn't a big movie, but I enjoyed it. It was fun. And I'm watching it. I go, that's the story right there. That was from our team. And it is a 30 for 30, because, I've heard guys on the team talk about it. I think it was Mike Adams had the funniest response. He goes, we all should have known when, we'd get up in the morning, we go to his room, and he'd be in his slipper robes and drinking a coffee, reading the newspaper, that this was not a normal college kid.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. Ron McKelvey. Oh my gosh.
That's a story. That's
the
story for you, right, Chip?
Season.
Just call ESPN and get them to do the manuscript, and then we'll get Linklater to do it. There you go.
Yeah.
Done.
Yeah. I'm serious. I'm going to call one of my Hollywood producer friends and say, okay, there's your 30 for 30. Yeah. All right. We'll take a quick break with All-American offensive lineman, two-time Super Bowl winner, and 2023 College Football Hall of Fame nominee, Dan Neal. And if you're watching us on the Horns 24/7 YouTube channel, we will roll on. And Dan, for a 5-7 football team in 2021, Texas has had about the most active, positive offseason I can remember, from, landing a top 5 recruiting class loaded with offensive linemen, including, the two highest ranked recruits on the offensive line, Devin Campbell and Kelvin Banks. And then, a bunch, they 7 offensive linemen they landed in the class, loaded up on the defensive line too. They bring in Gary Patterson, former TCU coach, as a special assistant. They've hired 2 of the brightest assistant coaches in college football. I mean, does anyone remember last year? They lost to Kansas at home. I have to say it was in the longest losing streak, 6 games since 1956, the year before Darrell Royal took over. And then to have this offseason, Dan, has it even surprised you?
No, college football is different, and that's just fans. We have to accept it, and that is today's college football teams are going to be the best money can buy. And you just mentioned how they had the best offensive line recruiting class they've had in years, and it's the same time that they announced that they were going to have an NIL fund paying their offensive linemen. Go figure, right? And then as far as kind of the change of the team. Well, that's just the tip of the iceberg. How many transfers did we get? And Bijan Robinson stays and he's driving a Lamborghini. And I'm not being negative on the players. That's the day we're in now, where you can go out, as do the NFL teams, and you can build a team in a year. Challenge is going to be to keeping it together, because guess what? After next season, whatever happens, if some of these players turn out to be good, other teams are going to come and try and steal them away. It's just the way college football is now. And I look at it and say, well, if that's how it is, if it's going to be who can pay the most, we should win. And let's go win, because we're within the rules. And it's today you can pay players. So I still think that it's going to get even more out of control money-wise as this thing goes by. But it does allow us to change things around quickly. And, Quinn Ewers is here on campus. He wasn't here last year, and I think he's driving an Aston Martin. That's why I think people are excited about this season. And you hear, well, we got this guy and this guy. Yeah, we do. We're paying them. That's fine. We can do it, but we do. And there's no reason why we don't have great players here at Texas. As far as last year's season, is the NIL wasn't in effect last year. Sarkisian came in with what he had and tried to do the best he could with it. And it was a bad year. It didn't turn out well. And as you talked about, it was a 6-game losing streak. Things started to roll the wrong way, and they just couldn't recover it. And a lot of times that's the players, as I mentioned earlier, players taking ownership of that team. If the players allow a 6-game losing streak to happen when you're losing against teams like Kansas, who you are no doubt better than, that's on the players. And they got to figure that out as players. What do they want to be? Where do they want to be at the end of the season? They want to have their number in the stadium, or they want to be known for the 6 losses in a row? It's up to them.
When you look at, player leadership, I've had coaches say it's ideal when your big guys, your linemen, offensive, defensive, are your best players, and because they're the most intimidating guys.
Yeah.
Do you buy that? Where does the leadership have to come from?
Well, so I do buy that. To touch on that quickly, and that is they're the biggest guys in the room, in a room of big guys, and so they're kind of intimidating. And then the other aspect about it is there's more offensive linemen on a football team than any other position, maybe DBs on some, but it's pretty close. So there's more of them. They're bigger, and then a lot of guys are scared of them because they're not necessarily the pretty guys, and they're known to be, I guess the manly guys or something, and so they're just intimidating. And those guys, if they set the tone of how things are done, it really does have an effect. Because remember, they're the only guys on the football team that are guaranteed every play that they're going to go hit somebody every play. So they got to have a little bit of a screw loose. And I think a lot of guys respect that. They got to be kind of tough guys. So, when those guys are your leaders, you set a tone quickly. If some guy goes across the middle and, flinches because he's about to get hit and drops the ball, he doesn't want to have to walk back to that huddle and face those 5 guys that just beat their head in so he could catch the ball. And then he gets scared. That doesn't work. And that's why those guys can be your leaders. Now, the other position is your quarterback has to be on the offense. He's the one that runs the offense. He's the one that controls. He's got to be a leader. And you hear stories of the 05 team, and Vince Young was no doubt the leader. And when you have a good player that demands everybody else play up a certain level, you have teams like you had in 05. And obviously they were talented. Those things are keys. As I mentioned about, our team, and, James Brown was a quiet leader, but everyone respected him. And that's first key of leadership. And everyone followed him because they knew that James was going to do whatever he could to help win football games. So those are kind of the keys. And defensively, you got to have the same kind of atmosphere. Mike Backer's usually the guy that's vocal. Your safeties, these are the kind of guys that got to be willing to go hit people, set the tone, and be tough. And when you have those kind of tough, and then talented helps, but I take tough over it, guys on your team, and that just understand that there's a point in the game where we need to make a play, and they're the kind of guys that go make those plays. That's when you start to get really good.
Yeah, I mean, and when you look back on Texas here over the last several years since 09, the offensive line has been more miss than hit. And that has just got to change, Dan. I mean,
Well,
Texas.
and here's the other thing about it too, Chip. I don't harp on talent too much because I believe character over talent any day. And I would look for those type of guys, those character-driven guys to help build teams, and then the talent will follow, hopefully. Now, if you can find character and talent in the same guy, then you got a Hall of Fame type of player. This team last year, as you mentioned, lost 6 straight ball games, and they had 0 guys drafted. There is a talent deficiency on the team. It's just evident. The NFL draft tells you the kind of talent you have. I want to say what 2 guys have been drafted off the offensive line in how many years here at Texas. And that's undoubtedly an indicator of the talent of the offensive line the past 10 plus years, and go on and on at other positions. So as we talk about, Texas becoming a great football team, first and foremost, I think you got to find those character guys. And then second is you got to find talent. And there is a lack of talent on the team. And that NIL, with free, and let me tell you that with the transfer portal, that is free agency, people. That's the same difference. So you have money in free agency, you should be able to go out and buy some of the most talented guys out there. And I think they're doing that. And I think that reflected some of their transfers that they've gotten.
Let me ask you this, Dan, because people are getting excited about Texas because Bijan Robinson is a first-round pick. Quinn Ewers was the number 1 recruit in the entire nation in 2021, just like Vince Young was in 2002. But Vince Young redshirted as a freshman, didn't even really start full-time until 2004. He redshirted in 2002, started some games in 2003, up and down. Are people and you're probably going to have a true freshman play on the offensive line, maybe more than one. Can you turn things around that quickly?
With free agency, you can, because you can go get talented guys. Now, here's my concern, as you said, if I was, king of the world, I would have really tried to find some offensive linemen in the transfer portal, because freshmen just can't come into play. I mean, once in a while they can get by, but physically you're not anywhere near where those other guys are. If you think about your physical maturation from 18 to 22, it's light years. And you haven't trained like you do in college. I mean, you could take the same time frame in the NFL and say, well, this guy's older. No, it's a totally different world, because one, your physical maturation is progressing as much, and two is you've been training at a high level for a long time. You're not going to get that much bigger and stronger. When you're 18, you haven't really trained like you do when you get to college. And then that was 5 years of training. Physically, you're a totally different person. So to expect these young guys at 18 to come in and really contribute, I think it's a tall order. Not saying it won't happen, not saying it can't happen, but I will guarantee you, if they do come in and contribute, they're going to be better players in 4 years from now than they are this year. And the point being is they may be good, but we're still not getting the best that they can be, and you won't for a while. And to be a really great football team, you have to have high level at that position, all the time. So that's my biggest concern. But if they can do something up front and get some time with Bijan Robinson and the quarterbacks and receivers and the things they have in offense, they could actually really have a very, very good offense if they can just buy enough time.
Yeah. I mean, I had one coach say if that offensive line can just fall down and get in the way of people, with all the receiver skill talent and Bijan Robinson, this offense should be able to move the football and win games. When you when you watched last year, the team go from 4-1 to losing 6 straight, what stood out to you? What was missing? What was going on?
Yeah, and honestly, Chip, I used to focus a little bit more on, the intricacies. I didn't as much last year. I wasn't doing the Longhorn Network, therefore I didn't have to, comment on it. And so I just kind of watched it more casually. So for me to sit there and say specifically what was going on, I couldn't. I will say that, Bijan Robinson is a fun player to watch, and he's a special guy. So enjoy him while you have him. And he made a lot of plays that really weren't there into something. And that's when you got somebody special. And it's kind of, I'm a broken record here, but it's been the problem. And it's really hard to do. And that's why it's a problem. Most teams do struggle, and that's getting to the second level. In other words, you're doubles teaming on that first level, those down linemen, and you're trying to get to the linebackers. It's hard to do. Teams struggle with it, and Texas struggled with it last year, as they have for the past few years. And that's really when you start to see the progression. If you can get on linebackers, that means the next guy to hit Bijan is a safety, and he's got to make that safety miss, and he can make that safety miss. The problem is when D linemen and linebackers are hitting Bijan, that's an offensive line issue, and they got to figure out how to get him to that next level untouched and allow him to really be the player that he can be. Yeah, and I'll give it to you this way, Chip, if you bear with me here. Is you remember a guy named Barry Sanders in playing for your Detroit Lions?
Oh, yeah.
Really, all you had to do was put 5 beer cans in front of him, and he'd still rush for 1,800 yards a season.
Yeah.
There's those kind of players once in a while. Most guys can't do that. And Bijan was having to, take some hits early and still doing what he did. If he could get clean through that line, wow, it'd be amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see if they can, get that figured out, because there are some fifth-year offensive linemen who were still struggling last year, and you're wondering, okay, is that going to?
Well, and I didn't mean to cut you off. Here's the reality. Okay, if you're a fifth-year offensive lineman and haven't really played, and you're playing as a senior or junior or even a fifth-year guy on a bad offensive line, why haven't you played earlier? If you're a fifth-year guy or a senior or fourth-year guy on a great offensive line, okay, you had to wait your turn. But when there's nobody in front of you and you can't get out there, I don't know what to say, man.
Yeah. Yeah, no,
that's kind of where we're at.
Jeez. All right. So Dan, when you take all of the off-season developments, as you said, NIL, free agency, Texas, the offensive linemen are going to get $50,000, all the scholarship offensive linemen, for doing some charitable appearances and whatnot. Does the money in the locker room scare you? You played in the NFL, that's one thing, salaries and all that. But in this new age in college, you've got some players who are already there who probably aren't making a bunch of NIL money, but to bring players in, they've probably been promised some NIL money. How do you think that's going to work in the locker room?
I do not envy Sarkisian when it comes to that. That's going to be a tricky deal. What you're going to have. Look, I always tell people that football got progressively worse as far as enjoyment level the more money you interjected into it. Most guys would probably tell you that the best time they had playing football was in high school. That's when it was really fun. I loved it at Texas, and I got to the NFL, and I loved playing football, so I was thankful for the chance to do it. And I played on a team that we managed things pretty well. So it was still fun, but it wasn't as much fun because all of a sudden you're fighting for your job. You're worried about getting fired. It's a different world, right? It's not as much fun. So now all of a sudden we've really got money interjected in college football. And here's the thing that I would say that is reflective of what Sarkisian has to deal with. He doesn't pay the players. He has no say on what the players make. That's a third-party entity. It'd be illegal for him to do any of those things. So what guys make, what deals they get, that Sark can't control it. He only has to figure out how to make everybody deal with it in that locker room. And And one thing about a good locker room in the NFL is we all make different money or all make different salaries. And it's public information. We all know what each other makes. There's not one day that I walked in that locker room, I looked at John Elway and thought, man, I should be making what he's making. He obviously was a bigger contributor than I am. You all know that, and so you're okay with that. But then on the other side, no one worked harder than John. He was a leader that set the tone and gave effort. And so you had no issue with his salary. No one did. What you run into in college is you're going to have some guys, especially in this new world, that are going to come in. And this was true when I was playing. They show up day one entitled because they were the stud at their high school and they think they're going to be great here and they're arrogant. And, they get punched in the mouth one day after first practice and everything changes for them. Now throw money into that equation. And then some of these guys, are going to think they should be playing right now and they're driving the big cars and they got all the cash. It's just going to be when the money goes to a turd that doesn't have character, that's when you start having problems, and you can't control that as a head coach. So he's got to kind of figure out how to manage all that. And like I said, I don't envy him. He's got to figure out a way for everybody to still come together, play together, and put the money in what guys are getting paid and fairness. I mean, I guess that's the thing. Is this going to be everybody's introduction and the world ain't fair?
Yeah. No, it's a fascinating time. And I talked to Gary Patterson last week, and he said it's a different world than even a year ago, and he's looking at it and saying, man, he said, I see how hard Sark is working to manage all this stuff. And he said he really respected him for it, but it's a different job. Urban Meyer said, I don't know that the age of NIL and the transfer portal are for me or my style. That
what do you mean? They're perfect for his style.
I mean,
he's been doing it for years, just illegally.
Yeah. But that taskmaster.
Yeah. You can't intimidate. The day's intimidating and pushing guys around that used to go on in college that do not in the NFL. That's done.
Yeah.
You can't get away with that as a coach anymore. And I wonder about Nick Saban too, long term, because that's how he operates.
Yeah, he might be starting to show some of that by speaking out, saying A&M bought their whole class and all that. So it's, that's a lot for a guy who's 70 years old to have to adjust to what really is everyone else getting to do what maybe he's been doing for a while. But anyway.
Yeah, cashing in.
I digress.
Yes.
So Dan, before we let you go, I mean, your career, you're kind of like Forrest Gump, but listen, you helped Priest Holmes and Ricky Williams and Terrell Davis, John Elway. You were a contributor to their success. When you look back on, the guys that you played with, the guys that you helped block for, Terrell Davis going to the Hall of Fame. I mean, there's got to be a huge sense of pride inside you about all of that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you look at it two ways. One is I helped these guys achieve these goals, or I was just a really crappy player that ended up getting lucky and playing for Hall of Fame players that made me look good. I don't know.
I'm not going there. I remember the draft special where Bill Parcells said he interviewed you at the combine, and you'd probably been in medicals all night, and he's like, "What about your knee? What about your knee?" And you're like, I don't give a crap about my knee. I'm going to be a hell of an offensive lineman for someone. So let's get on with it. And Parcells was like, I like this guy. I like this Dan Neal. He brought you up as an example of a guy who's like, hey, don't tell me about my medical. I'm going to be a football player. Yeah. And that, hell, they barely gave you a scholarship at Texas, right?
Oh yeah, no, they didn't want to. Yeah, they were kind of pushed into it by my high school coach, and so yeah, I mean, it worked out, right?
It worked out. Dan Neal, the best pulling guard. John Malkovich didn't want to give you a scholarship initially, and then he ended up calling you the best pulling guard he's ever seen, and he coached with the Cowboys and the Kansas City Chiefs. and the rest is history, my friend.
Yeah.
Dan,
It is.
and how's your knee? Because you did have knee replacement. All those years of
Yeah.
blocking for Priest Holmes and Ricky Williams took its toll. How's your knee?
Well, I am turning better. It's my left knee, which is my left side, and I'm a right-handed golfer. So I'm actually turning better on that left knee and getting through the ball better. So that's really all that matters, Chip.
Good.
Yeah.
You're out there playing golf.
As much as I can.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Well, Dan, we'll let you get back out to the golf course, man. I love talking ball with Dan Neal. Thanks so much for taking the time for us here on the Flagship podcast.
Hey, anytime, Chip. It's always great talking with you, man.
All right. For Dan Neal, I am Chip Brown of horns247.com. Until next time here on the Flagship podcast, stay safe and keep the faith.